Hey everybody, this is the Afterthoughts, where we're going to talk a little bit about Psalm 91 today as we're continuing the trek through the Psalms. So Nick chose this and immediately begins, and because we were wondering where, which Psalm, because I think when we were reading 88, 99, one of those, like one day we read it, I was like, well then,
That
like
one, that one will be hard to preach.
we sort of kind of like, well, so the psalmist is having a bad day, like it did not get better. So I think it's funny, we bring out some of the terminology sometimes. So you brought eisegesis and exegesis into the pulpit this morning. You did explain eisegesis, and that's one people really don't recognize the prefix there. Eis means into, and we're familiar with ex, so exegesis is coming out, but eisegesis, you're putting the ideas in. And so the avoiding of the idea of prosperity, if you read the Psalms, just kind of recognizing, some of them they don't end well. Like, and sometimes I communicate that life does not end well, but we can still praise, and that's where you kind of went with this. But I mentioned the beginning of the sermon, the whole idea of the fortress, because um, I think it was good when you hit this and bring in the full weight of that word, because most of us probably have no clue what like a real fortress looks like. I mean, um, I'm probably more familiar because I like medieval history and I like the castle
Castles
walls and
and
all
yeah,
that, and I get into the things in history where like I think it was Constantinople. No one could successfully like infiltrate until gunpowder, and they were able to attack from the water, and then their Greek fire didn't work out anymore, and I mean, it was impenetrable. Like no one,
right.
that was their last holdout, and so it was quite valid talking about you think you're secure, but you may not be, just like with some of your stories, and what that would really take to be truly secure like that. So it was a good word about where I think poetry is meant to evoke a response.
Right.
And again, that word fortress doesn't have the response. And I think you brought that in a big way. So appreciate that. I thought that was good. And so in terms of the ones that were the different portions, and you called them voices as far as kind of the different people speaking the different sides of it. And I did like at the very beginning you talk about living in God's shadow. I had marked this, and that is no casual Christianity. And again, it's that same thing. These words aren't. We're not feeling the impact, and you were trying to express that. I will admit I didn't say it during because I do have a sense of reverence, but you talked about your dog like going into your shadow, and I thought to myself, you have some pretty big dogs, and
This was
the fact that you were.
this was my mom's puppy.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
It was a little dog.
I was just like, hey, when you can cast a shadow that a German Shepherd can
So
hide
hold
it.
on, hold on. You wait till we're on this to call me fat? Okay.
I'm
All
just,
right, all right,
I'm
all right.
just saying, like that went
If
through my mind. I'm
your
glad you
pastor's so
clarified.
fat, the
I,
shadow he casts can cover a dog.
I'm just clarifying that with that
Oh my goodness.
these are the thoughts I had during the sermon. I was just like, I mean, it went through, like I was trying to picture like what your German Shepherd would have. Anyway, I'm sorry. So
Now we got your pastor's fat jokes. All right, cool. Let's
not at
do
all.
this.
So shifting this and on the idea of living in enemy territory, because I had actually this week at the Bible college, at some point, one of my classes, I had hit this really hard about the idea that we are in enemy territory, and we forget that
Yeah.
we we are in genuine spiritual warfare, and we grow complacent,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I'm trying to remember the context, but I had brought up, this is why I said I think the church, calling the church the sanctuary, is such a good term, because we should be running away in a sense, like this is a safe place. This is a place we go for repose. We can, in that sense, leave those burdens behind, because after, when we leave, we got to go back, we got to deal with it. But to have that R&R, to have that time where you can just rest,
with God, with your
Yeah.
brothers and sisters, with your family. Yeah.
I mean, that is we we turn church many times just it's just casual. Like we don't think of it. We don't really consider the need that we have
Right.
for this place. So I think that's it's a good reminder. Because I mean, in this morning, I was in a bad mood. I was tired and I was cranky, and I just felt like during the worship time, I'm like, all right, this is filling my soul. This is healing some of that which I'm running away from. So, um, but I think in looking at the rest, I did just your illustration with I wrote down. You didn't say this. I wrote down. We are baby ducks. Like we
We are
are.
baby ducks.
Did you say that we are baby
No,
ducks?
I mean, I said, I did. I think I said we're the ducklings. I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. But I wrote it down in the words. We're baby ducks, and I just thought of how like stupid and gangly baby ducks are, and I'm like, I think there's a lot of good to that. That we are that. That
And
this
they think they're
is.
all big and bad until there's a shadow. And as soon as there's a shadow, they run to their mama.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just some of the videos of like just how incompetent the baby ducks are,
Falling
and
storm drains all the time.
yeah, yeah, and I'm like, that's us. So there is that with the baby ducks, and you brought it in with the end of the whole concept of deliverance, and that we'll have this rescue. And so I did also want to make a comment because you made a comment about you listening to guys talk about space and time, and because you were discussing about prayers, I got to send up my prayers, and are we really sending them that way? And I just started running through my mind all these things, and Stacy's like, what is this about? And I'm like, so I sort of did geek out, and I was just like, since God is outside of both space and time, no matter how far you send anything, it's no closer to that object than it was before because there is no actual like coordinate location. And she's like, I'm sorry I asked. So
See, like I said,
like
I'm
I
sure
feel like she
that
was
when
just
I
like,
said
what?
that
Like what?
statement, there would be somebody like, but the intention was there.
No,
That's present.
I just started geeking out with it because I'm like, but it's true. It's like there is no sense of actual location between us and God with him being spirit. So what you touched upon briefly is actually one of those deeper truths, like when you kind of understand who and what God is, and know that he is not subject to our limitations.
Right.
We, in our day and age, we have things like, once the telephone comes along, and then once Zoom comes along, we have all this ability that around the world instantly we can communicate, we can connect. We have overcome some of these difficulties, but none of that ever existed with God. So the fact that not only is he outside of space, so we don't have to send anything anywhere, since he's outside of time, he doesn't get caught by surprise by
Right.
anything. We're the ones for whom, like, oh, this is a new development. My whole world just got rocked.
Well, what I was trying to convey there is I think when we say the things like, oh, I got to send my prayers, or we have such a separation
Mm.
in our mind between us and heaven and us and where he is instead of the idea that he's here. Like this isn't a it's like we've created this barrier that doesn't exist because our minds can't comprehend the idea of omnipresent, the idea of what does it look like when one is outside of space and time. So I was really just trying to break down that barrier. I don't know if I did it well. I mean, we were just talking about this ahead of time. I may have had a moment of pastoral panic from the pulpit today. That was a lot of peace. But I realized that I may have there was something that popped in my head as I was looking at the congregation that I may have uh, misstepped as a pastor previously in the day, and I kind of bobbled my sermon a little bit because it was just like that thing popped in my head while I was talking, and yeah, I think it was right around this time that you're talking about. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, you you,
Uh,
you sort of
but
went.
come to find out, I was good
Yeah,
after the sermon, and I like settled, like I was actually taken care of. But there was a moment of panic there, and like in this moment in the sermon when I was just like, and I kind of bobbled a little bit.
I did notice you sort of kind of went strange with it, which is fine, but um, I think the point is valid. I think that we assume God has our limitations and he doesn't, and that taking that moment and almost kind of like trying to figure that out, I think is worth it. But I think it's also good, and why times like this are good, because that was real. That happened. And a lot of times people who are listening don't realize, and I think they sometimes forget, we're real people. And then all of a sudden something happens, and or something comes across, or the worst I ever had was when my tablets or whatever I was using, I was preaching from, connected to my messages, and all of a sudden a message would come through, and I'm just like, and it's bad news or something, and it's like, and I'm trying to not let my thoughts go there and trying to focus here. That's a very real issue.
It
That's
happened today, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
That's why I learned
And I
not to.
tried to finish strong, but like I don't think I did. Like I was
Well, you
like I
finished it.
just had this moment of oh no.
I think some people were concerned, like, what's going
Yeah, when I
on.
walked off, yeah.
But I think, again, it just goes as we're it's very real. Like in those moments, like you had that, like, am I going to live out this piece? Am I going to, how am I going to get through? And I think it's good for people to hear that. I think it's good, and I appreciate, as you brought, we're now getting close. We'll be hitting close to 100 this coming week. Almost there, and as we continue trekking on. But thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Looking forward to next time.
No, I appreciate you.